Hi, I am going to talk about exposure to environmental hazards during pregnancy. There are a ton of environmental hazards in general, and they can be particularly dangerous in pregnancy, particularly the first trimester when the baby's developing. So it's important to kind of be aware of what you're around day to day and try to minimize those exposures. So some of the things that come to mind are like lead, mercury, pesticides, even air pollution, heavy metals, endocrine disrupting chemicals, any kind of like major chemical that we use every day in our homes, or if you work where you have to use chemicals like that, can all be um, potentially dangerous for the fetus that's growing. The lead there's still some risk of lead in pipes and paint, although they're trying to change that. But if you live in an older home, that could be a risk. The carpeting in older homes, if someone's removing the carpeting, like, you should avoid that area. There's chemicals in that. Mercury is found in fish a lot of times, and that's kind of a double-edged sword because fish is really healthy in pregnancy for the most part, for the omega-3s, but it's also can be potentially dangerous if you're eating fish that have a longer lifespan, like shark and things like that. So those are some fish that you might want to avoid. And there's the FDA has, or I'm sorry, the EPA has information about guidelines on what kind of fish is okay for pregnant women. If you're able to, of course, buying organic vegetables is better. They're not sprayed with pesticides, or it's limited on what is put onto the fruit and vegetables, limiting canned and processed foods because those have the endocrine disrupting chemicals in them to make it shelf stable. More things that people don't really think about very often that has the endocrine disrupting chemicals is things like scented candles, fragrance like Glade, like plug-in fragrances. There's a whole bunch of those. A really good source to check on things like that is an app or a website called Think Dirty. That's a really good place where you can like kind of plug in like everyday cleaners, or shampoo, conditioner, body lotion, candles, all that sort of thing. You can plug it in and it'll tell you what level of hazard it is for the chemical that's in it. So that's a really good source. Obviously, washing your vegetables really well. If you're eating leafy greens, which you should be, which is really great for pregnancy, just kind of peel off the first layer before you cut it up. We have a really nice here. I live in Yuma, Arizona, and we are like the capital of lettuce. Almost all lettuce, or a huge portion of lettuce for the United States, is grown here in Yuma. So here we have really poor water. And when we first moved here, I didn't understand. I'm like, it's just hard water, like that's the problem. But it's actually because we have a lot of fields, and fertilizer and things like that is used in the fields, and the chemicals get into the water. And yes, we do have hard water here, but there's also a lot of chemicals, and it makes for a ton of calcium buildup, and the water here ruins almost everything. So we pretty much like triple filter all of our water. That's another environmental hazard, particularly in my area. So if you obviously you should be drinking a ton of water. So just filtering it. We have a filter called a Berkey, which eliminates like a ton of stuff out of the water, and you can tell from the tap drinking it to putting it through the Berkey. It's just a night and day difference. And it also takes out fluoride. If that's something, you can add that filter to take out the fluoride. But yeah, washing the vegetables, drinking clean filtered water, avoiding lead exposure, all of those things are huge for pregnancy. Moving on to some other things that people don't think about also, I feel like, is heat exposure, noise exposure, and heavy lifting. Those three things, a lot of people have to do those for their jobs. Here, like I said, in Yuma, Arizona, we are right at the Mexican border. We're in the Sonoran Desert, so it is very hot. It was 113 today, and we're not even at the peak of the heat for the season. So August will probably be the worst. And so you look at temperatures around 120 or so, it's like almost the daily. So that's definitely something that, a pregnant person should not be in that kind of heat for very long. Definitely not working in that kind of heat. Definitely not working in an environment with a ton of noise or heavy lifting. One last thing I wanted to touch on was Zika virus. That's transmitted through mosquitoes, and there are certain areas that are heavily that's a bigger issue in. You want to avoid those areas, traveling to those areas, and then avoid having sex with anyone that's traveled to those areas. So those are just some of the things. There's a whole lot more that goes into environmental hazards, but this is just to get you thinking about like what I need to think about when my baby's growing. Like, what you think that your baby's housed pretty protectively, but anything that you take in, your baby's taking in. So if you're taking in any of those chemicals, then your baby might be taking in some of those chemicals. So it's good to try to reduce or avoid those. Thanks.